former King County Senior Deputy Prosecutor and a leader on ending domestic violence in our communities. The former Executive Director of King County Sexual Assault Resource Center, Mary Ellen Stone, who dedicated a lengthy and effective career to protecting survivors. And King County Democrats Chair Beth Baisley, who has been fighting for our rights and our shared values for decades. So thank you all for being here today and standing together as we call for Assessor John Wilson to immediately end his campaign for county executive and resign his office as county assessor. According to investigative reporting, the incidents we are hearing about today are not isolated. There is a pattern of stalking, harassment, and inappropriate behavior. These accounts are credible, detailed, asserted to in court, relied on in issuing protection orders, and they are documented in law enforcement records. As I said in a statement earlier today, while Assessor Wilson is entitled to due process under the law for any civil proceedings or criminal proceedings, holding public office is a privilege, not a right. And with that privilege comes the responsibility of being trustworthy to the people who have elected you. These latest revelations show that he clearly has breached that trust. Too often in our politics, it's normalized for men who have committed sexual assault and domestic abuse to continue holding on to office, even at the highest levels of our government. But that should not be the case here in King County. Assessor Wilson knew that a second restraining order was being issued before he filed to run for this office earlier this month. But he decided to file anyway, I assume because he thought his behavior would be tolerated, because it too often is, especially for men in positions of power. All elected officials in King County and all candidates in this race for King County Executive need to speak with one voice that Assessor Wilson must end his campaign and resign as assessor. There's a legal process for investigating and adjudicating these allegations. We will learn soon enough whether any further civil or criminal action will be pursued. We must also determine whether Assessor Wilson used resources to aid his stalking and harassment, and I will be calling on our county ombuds to conduct this investigation. The public has a right to know. Most importantly, we must stand with survivors. Too often, survivors are not believed, especially in the face of powerful men. The silence on this issue until today has been deafening. To the survivors of domestic violence, harassment, and stalking, I want to say, I stand with you. You deserve leaders who will not tolerate this kind of behavior. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. And next we will have turn over to Beth Baisley.
Thank you. And thank you, Claudia. As chair of the King County Democrats, I am here to say that our party does not tolerate domestic violence, sexual assault, or intimidation in our community at all, and certainly not among our elected officials. John Arthur Wilson is a person who we have in the past endorsed for his position as assessor. And that's why it's very important to me to step up and say, we hold you to a higher standard and we expect you to rise to that occasion. Back in February, when these initial allegations were made, we called for him to acknowledge and to apologize, and he did not choose to do so. So I have personally called for a further investigation into whether he used his authority as King County Assessor to influence the firing of an individual who was named in that original restraining order, and whether he used his government-provided phone or access to any of that information in his stalking and harassment. We have yet to get any answers to these questions, but it's imperative that we do, and it's vital that we can then share them with all of you. Assessor Wilson really needs to step down. He no longer is serving with the intent to care for all of us, his constituents. And until we have some answers, he needs to step aside. We can't let him ride out and remain in office like too many powerful men across our country are doing now. So the Democrats of King County ask him to please do the right thing and step aside. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. We'll now turn it over to Mary Ellen Stone.
Sure. I'm Mary Ellen Stone, former CEO of King County Sexual Assault Resource Center. I want to be reminding all of us that King County has led the country in providing robust services for victims of sexual assault and domestic violence and stalking in order to help them with the healing that they need and get the services that they deserve. We've also led on providing prevention programming to communities across the county. We know that survivors often feel invisible and dismissed. And we also know, though, that public acknowledgement of the impact of sexual assault or domestic violence really can be validating. It helps people feel that they're not alone. It makes them realize that their voice and their experience really matters. And that's particularly important now. As part of being a leader in the country, our elected officials have been really important advocates for survivors. They have stepped up. They have advocated, they have made sure that victims have the protection through the laws that they deserve and that the services that they need. And we have been saying to a woman here, we hold our electeds to the highest possible standard. The charges against John Arthur Wilson that have been outlined are unacceptable for anyone, and particularly unacceptable in an elected official. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. And finally, we will have Senator Mankha Dhingra.
Good afternoon, everyone. You know, so many of us participated in the Women's March and the Me Too movement. The focus of those movements was and continues to be that we believe survivors. As a former prosecutor and advocate for survivors, and as a senator who chairs a Law and Justice Committee, we have to continue to make sure that in this state, in this Washington, we believe survivors. We have to take allegations of harassment and stalking seriously. A court sought fit to issue a temporary order based on these allegations to protect the survivor. As leaders, especially women leaders, we have to let survivors know that they're not alone and that we believe them. We cannot have people in power who have a history of abusive behavior. Given our federal administration, the survivor movement is reeling, and we cannot allow that to happen in our King County. If elected, County Executive Wilson would oversee the county law enforcement, including the sheriff's office that is responsible for helping to protect survivors like her, as well as budgets that help survivors with critical resources. This is not about simply sending a message to survivors. This is about assuring survivors that when they come forward, we will believe them. I'm asking Assessor Wilson to step down and suspend his campaign for county executive. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And now we will open it up to questions. It looks like, so give me just a minute. I'm going to change my view screen here so that I can see everybody. But I see Scott's hand up. So Scott, you are free to come off mute and go ahead.
Thanks so much, and thank you all for holding this press conference. Councilmember Balducci, I wanted to ask, you said the silence until this day has been deafening. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about when the Seattle Times originally did a story in January. You know, I remember the King County Democrats putting out a statement. I don't remember a statement from many other folks, including yourself. Can you talk about why you didn't say something then? Were you worried it would seem cynical since you are both contenders for county executive? Can you talk about why you didn't speak up then?
I did. I put out a statement. We'll gladly share it with you after this. And I saw Chair Baisley's statement, and she asked for the investigation back then. I don't recall hearing from anybody else but the two of us, however. And so that's what I was referring to. But yeah, we'll make sure to share that with you as soon as we're off here.
Thank you. Yeah.
Do you have any other questions?
I have a question, and Erica, I'm having trouble.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Erica.
Similar to what Scott asked, I do think that the silence kind of was deafening. Claudia, I would also like to see your statement, but the allegations that were published earlier this year were pretty horrifying as well. Why is this set of allegations kind of raising, I guess, more concern or causing all these calls to resign?
I'm sorry, it got a little loud here. Can you repeat and speak up a little louder, Erica? I apologize.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm like stopped by the side of the road in my car.
Oh, okay,
So
yeah.
my
I can hear
audio
you much
probably
better
not
now.
great.
Please say again.
I'm just why is that? Why are these incidents that we just reported causing all these calls for John Arthur Wilson to resign when the other incidents that were reported earlier this year were, I would say, equally horrifying? Why not calling him to resign then?
Yeah, I agree that the original allegations were completely unacceptable. I will say that for myself, I am in a campaign. I was concerned at the time that the focus should be on survivors and supporting survivors, and I wanted it not to be seen as being about a campaign. And so that was part of my consideration in how I approached what I said and didn't say at that time. Today, we have ongoing behavior. It hasn't stopped. It just keeps going. And I have no reason to believe that it will stop even after today. So I just can't stay silent any longer, no matter how, or fail to make this call today that he should step down, because I have no reason to believe that anything will get better. And we can't allow somebody who's actively engaging in this kind of behavior to just continue being in a position of leadership.
And I'll just add to that, I had done a Facebook post reposting Beth Baisley's message and asking, really making sure that we have leaders who embody the values we believe in. But this is a pattern we see over and over again when survivors come forward. Gender-based violence is simply not taken seriously, is not seen as important as other issues. It is very hard and challenging to actually get allegations of abuse be taken seriously by all levels of government. And we see this when, and I'll say mostly women, because this is who we're talking about, the hesitancy in calling law enforcement, even when they call, the manner in which they are dealt with, even when an investigation is done, when it goes to the prosecutor's office, even the courts. So unfortunately, this is nothing new. And this is why it's so important for people to actually come up and say, we believe survivors, because we have a history in this state and in this country of not doing so. And at that point in time, he had the option of not filing to run for executive. In fact, I was surprised that he did, given those allegations. But what we have now is continuing behavior which has a pattern of abuse, which is really concerning. And so we have to make sure we address this seriously, that there is media coverage about this, because this behavior is not okay. And we as a society all have to come together and say, we believe survivors, and we do not need people in elected positions who have a history of abuse. I mean, you just have to look at the federal administration to see what is happening and the detrimental effect that that has had in this country. And we cannot allow that to happen in Washington.
Could I ask a question? I also can't figure out the hand raising. This is
Sorry,
David.
Who is this?
This is David with the Seattle Times.
Yes, go ahead, David.
My question is for Ms. Stone. You obviously have decades of history kind of working in this field. And I want to be a little delicate about how I ask. But, we talk about survivors and a history of abuse and domestic violence. And there's no allegations of physical violence in this case. And, the allegations are of stalking, and there are no criminal charges. And so I just wonder kind of how you think about this case versus, I guess just how you think about this case in terms of the work you've done over the years.
So I think what you might be asking, Dave, is where is this like on a continuum of bad behavior?
Sure, yeah.
Is that sort of what you're getting at?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, and I think we take it from the survivor's perspective. So what may be egregious behavior to somebody is not as bad to somebody else. So if someone takes the step, but what we look at is their definition of what's happened, how that's impacting them. And if someone takes the step to go ahead and seek protection, that's what we're looking at. Not was it this kind of abuse versus some other kind of more violent behavior. We really look at, well, how does the survivor define that? What kind of services does she need? And in this case, certainly the actions that she took in terms of seeking protection.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may just add to that.
I want to add one thing as well. Let me just say, just factually, there was an allegation of physical violence in at least the first round of allegations. If you go back and look at it, I think you'll see that.
And domestic violence is much broader than actual physical violence. I want to be very clear about that. This is a pattern of coercive control. It is about harassment. It's about threats. It's about stalking. It's not simply about the physical violence. That is a component of it. And I think it is really important for us to fully understand all of what domestic violence encompasses.
Is there anything else on this question? Any other questions?
If no one else has a question, I've already asked one, so don't want to, get
Go
to.
ahead, Scott.
Thanks. If the assessor does not resign, my understanding is there's would someone have to petition for recall? Is there, and I guess this is a question also for Councilmember Balducci, do you plan to introduce anything to the council as far as like a call from the council to resign or anything like that? Like what would the next steps be if he chooses not to resign? He does not seem particularly like he's going to. He hasn't told me yet anyway.
Thank you for the question. There are a series of escalating steps, starting with just a call, just a communication from the council, which I am hereby today asking that we do, and will follow up with my colleagues to make that a real formal communication. We can formally act to censure an elected official, which is a statement of reprimand, essentially. But the only way to remove an elected official from office, as you alluded, is to go through the recall process. There are standards, there has to be a petition, there has to be a vote. So that's, but you start with a communication and then a censure, and we see how, I have been surprised in the past by how people will react when they are directly called out and they see the writing on the wall. And I think that's what I hope is going to happen here.
Can you take one more question?
Joel, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I know that both of these people very, very well. I've dealt with them professionally, and I've from time to time admired both of them. It seemed to me, on the one hand, you're pronouncing judgment. On the other hand, you're calling for an investigation. And I have a basic question. Say Wilson resigns as assessor and pulls out of the race, but the investigation turns up either ends up inconclusive or exonerates him from some of the allegations that Lee has made. Where does John Wilson go to get his reputation back?
Thank you for that question. I'm glad you asked that. Let me take a swing at it. So there has been no dispute, zero dispute, that the events that have been laid out in the motion for restraining orders are untrue. They are essentially uncontested, that these things happened. Stalking behavior happened. Coercive behavior happened. What I am asking to be investigated is whether county resources were used in pursuit of the stalking and harassing behavior, because that would be a legal violation that we have responsibility for at King County that comes along with certain specific penalties and responsibilities. I do not believe that even Assessor Wilson has denied the assessment, the charges that have been made about his behavior. In fact, his comments have been limited to pointing at the survivor and saying, talk to her. I will have no further comment. I think it's on him if he wants to try to rehabilitate his reputation, but he has not attempted to as yet. If he has a defense, we haven't heard it. And I do believe that there is no dispute that most of this activity has occurred. The only question in my mind is whether we used county resources to do it.
Any further questions?
Doug's got his hand up. Doug Trump.
Yes, go ahead, Doug.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for having us. So I know, obviously this type of thing kind of keeps happening, but I was wondering if you had thoughts about if the movement is sort of against, this kind of abuse is making any progress. And I know some of the same politicians, like Mayor Harrell, for example, calling for the resignation. It's not the same tack he took when there were allegations against Ed Murray or others within city government, some in his administration. Do you think that the tables are turning, or that this is resonating more now, or just kind of a case by case thing?
Did you do? I mean, I'm happy to take a crack at that. Yes. Look, we're having this conversation here. We would not be having this a couple years ago. So I think there is a greater willingness to hold people accountable. We have a long ways to go, but I think there's no question the progress that we have made some progress in this area, and I think that's where it becomes particularly important for this conversation right now to say this is not the standard that we hold people to. We can do a whole lot better than this as citizens, and certainly our elected leaders must behave better than this, because I think we've agreed as a community we don't do this kind of thing. We don't do this sort of thing, especially if you're in an elected position. So I would say, yes, we've made some progress. Claudia, it looked like you were going to say something.
So many things, but you said it well. Thank you. What I was going to say is, Lexi, I do have to wrap up in the next 3 minutes. So if there are more questions for me, I'd like to try to address them quickly because I have another thing I have to get to. Apologies, y'all.
Yeah, that'd be great. Any other questions? I think pretty much everybody's at a chance, but going once, going twice. If you got a final question, let me know. All right.
I do have one more, and that is that apparently the couple were reconciled at one point. Apparently the petition has been made to get out of the domestic arrangement that they had several times. Why is this? Why do you? I guess the thing is, why are subsequent petitions and so on credible when previous ones have been withdrawn? Talk a little bit to that, to the plight of the victim in this case, and why this person may have withdrawn, and why this should be believed when it's posed again.
I hear that question as asking, why do survivors stay? Is that an accurate reframing of that? This is a question people ask all the time when they're outside of a domestic violence situation. Why did she stay? She could leave. And that is what is at the heart of the power control dynamics that we talk about in domestic violence. And Mary Ellen, feel free to jump in anytime. It is not easy to be in a relationship where you think you have found the person that you are in love with, and then realize over time that there's a pattern of abuse. And so trying to leave is extremely challenging and is extremely personal. And this is one of the issues we deal with all the time when we are talking about domestic violence allegations. Is the first question people ask is, why is she staying? Why isn't she leaving? And then there are many times when victims will change their minds or will recant. And that again goes back to the credibility of the victim and of the survivor. But we have enough data at this point in time. We have enough brain science at this point in time. We have enough information about domestic violence power control issues to understand that this is indeed what does happen. Survivors stay because for a wide variety of reasons. And we know that some of the most dangerous times for a survivor is when they are trying to leave. And so even that point in time, it's extremely tough. And this is part of believing survivors, is making sure you believe them, you're there for them in a way that is not judgmental of the tough decisions they have to make. So I'm happy to have Mary Ellen Stone talk more about this, but it is extremely challenging for survivors to leave an intimate partner. And lots of studies around that. There's a lot of issues around even changing their minds. Because when you have been a victim of abuse, it's very hard to end that without having the resources that you need to actually understand what it is that you're going through and why it is you're feeling the way you are feeling.
Yeah, and I have nothing to add. Mankha, you did a great job on that. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Senator. Claudia needs to go, and I am basically about to call this. However, Scott, you have a question for Beth. So, Beth, if you want to stay on briefly, but the rest of you, if you have any further questions you didn't get to for anybody, you all have my email. Please follow up. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I had one other follow-up question for you, Beth. When we talked this morning, you had mentioned your PDRs and you had gotten some info from the assessor regarding just Mr. Wilson's conduct. You mentioned the stuff that you hadn't gotten yet, but if I had had more time, I would have asked you what you did get in your PDR. Can you talk a little bit more about
Sure.
what you found? Yeah.
For those on the call who don't know, several months ago, I filed a public record disclosure and wanted to learn about what emails may have been sent, what text messages may have been sent from King County assessor equipment, the phone, the computer, the email addresses to the victim in this case. And then I also asked for any information regarding accessing of the not publicly available records that the assessor or his staff might have available. Metadata, to use the appropriate phrase, that might have been used for stalking or harassment. And I did receive some phone records, and I did receive some emails, and I did receive some text messaging that did not appear to hold much of interest, certainly compared to what was made available in the filing that Lee Keller made. And I have not yet received any of the information about metadata searches. But based on what I've seen from what was recorded around the restraining order, that was clearly enough for me to say that I feel uncomfortable that in the past, King County Democrats have endorsed John Arthur Wilson for his assessor role, and that we would not stand behind the person whose actions we see today. And that's why I asked to look at those records, and will continue to seek to see more of those records. But I haven't seen the metadata searches yet. Did I answer your question, Scott?
Yeah, I think so. I'm a little, what was in that original filing was a little bit vague. When he said metadata, according to the filing, to me, and I think we chatted about this, it wasn't quite clear if he was talking about metadata and photos that she had sent, or if it was like metadata that he has access to as the property assessor. I don't even know what
I agree.
he
We
has
don't
access
know.
to as the property assessor. Yeah,
Right, we don't know. So we're just going to ask, and of course, it's a vast amount of information, which is why it is taking an exceptionally long time to access. It's also a little bit of searching for a needle in a haystack. There's so much that he could be doing over such a long period of time. I was hoping through a scan, a search, to find things relatively quickly or easily. We did not, when I made that request, we did not have the data that's been provided to us in the restraining order. So I feel confident that what the information that's been shared now publicly reflects enough upon the person who we previously have supported with an endorsement to have concern that we didn't know this in the past. In this cycle of this election, John Arthur Wilson is not seeking the endorsement of the King County Democrats, so we don't have an opportunity to speak with him directly about anything about how he would choose to run his either campaign or if he were to be elected. He has to choose to engage with us.
thank you so much for everything.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
absolutely. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, everybody. We're gonna wrap up the Zoom. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.